All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk today on today's insight about driving decisions with Stratum data. So basically, we'll be talking about how Stratum can help you with its application content. We'll be looking at examples today about sales, open orders, trends, inventory, production, purchasing, and forecasting. So basically, a holistic view, essentially, of how Stratum can help your enterprise. We'll be concentrating on um, the innards, if you will, of Stratum. Essentially, as you can see, there's different application areas. Um, Sales performance management clearly is probably the most popular application. Whereas, as you can see, other areas of the company can be covered as well. Marketing, performance, how well are your trade funds working for you, customer performance, highlighting customers and focusing in on KPIs regarding customer attainment, manufacturing, looking at quality and the schedules and how, is production producing quality finished good, and are they producing it on time? Inventory, what is your inventory position? Do you have enough product in stock, material in stock to keep up with demand? Supplier performance management, as you can see, can help you on the purchasing side, looking at your vendors, your materials that you're procuring. Are you getting ripped off? Financial performance, looking at your GL, looking at profit and loss, and forecast planning and forecasting. So all these areas are within Stratum application, and you could tap into each one of these by using a view, and you can reach across different applications in a given view so that you can bring some of this data from these different applications together and get a more of a 360 view of what's going on in your business. If we were to take a look at that in the demo that I have, we can see that Stratum has these different areas, as you can see on the left-hand side, where I can dip into different areas of sales, where I can run a comparative sales view, where I can then see how I'm performing this year versus last. Over here on the right, current month and a rolling scenario, rolling 3 months, um, and get a position, right? So as we can see, month to date looks suspect. We can see that, we're down for the most part, barely up 2.9 over the same month of last year. But we take this with a grain of salt because it is current month and the month isn't over yet. So we could certainly maybe attain a more of a bigger figure than a 2.9 sales growth for the month. And but in doing so, you can use drill to view to allow your users to then drill to other areas of the application. In this case, maybe I want to see open orders so I can see what orders are still yet to ship for this month. So if I can see obviously some of the bigger dips here, we would like to get some sugar drop product out, given that it's down 9%. So what's open out of this 300,000? Can I, you know, what else is open? We've got 300,000 shipped, but what else can we ship out? And as you can see, as I do that, as I drill to this, it keeps the product brand for me, and um, and filters the view on it. As you can see, it's filtered on sugar drop there, and we can see that that happened automatically because of the drill to view feature, which is really nice. And in drilling to this view, we can see for the sugar top brand, all the customers that have open orders for this brand. So as we can see, there's quite a bit out there that is yet to ship. So definitely would like to talk to production about this, see if we can't get this out, supply chain guys, all of them, and see if we can expedite some of this out so that we can attain a better number for a current month. So that's the drill to view feature, right? And in this case, it's set at the properties level for this particular measure. If I right click and go to properties on that particular measure, we can see that the drill to view is enabled. And we see that there's a view out there that we chose to drill to, open order review by week by product. And this is really simple to set up if I wanted to drill to another view or select a different view. There it just opens up a menu with all the views in it, and I would select a view to drill to. It's that simple. All the magic that happens, the filter, the filtering, the passing of the filter for that particular product brand. For instance, if I see Southern Sweet here, if I want to get their numbers, I can just click on the Southern Sweet number, and then that passes the Southern Sweet filter to the view. We can see that these are now Southern Sweet data. So that's the magic of the drill to view, right? That's part of the application, is that get into the other application content very quickly, guiding your user down a path where they can gain insight and take action. And over here, we're doing something similar. On the right-hand side of the view, we can see the year-to-date numbers. And within these numbers, I've also got a drill to view set up to show a trend. In this case, I'm using a time range view, and time range is great. It's easy for the users to double click a column and select their range of time that they want to see data for. But it doesn't give me what the numbers look like in January, February, and March. There's no trend. So another tactic we could use here is the same drill to view, except in this particular measure, we're drilling them to a different view. If I were to take a look at the properties here, we're going to send them to a different view that is going to give us more of a trended look at the data. So instead of leaving it incumbent upon the user to build out the trend view from scratch, which would be a bad thing to do, why not just put out a view there that you can drill to, so that you can see, for instance, this 7.4 million for Tip Top, or I can sort this in descending fashion. And as we can see, Farm Fresh here is my top brand. So how are they trending? So now I click on that particular link, and then it takes me to a different view, right? That has time in it. In this case, now I can see the trend for sales. And then I can see how that number is being trended for that particular brand, Farm Fresh. So we can see that 85 mil and how that trends out. And we can compare that to last year, and we can see how it's performing. So instead, again, that would take a little time to build. And in this case, you've got something that I can drill in on, right? I can drill from January into my weeks, and I can see the weeks of January and how they trend out as well. So the time is stackable, where I can then drill today if I've got daily data, and I can see how the data looks like at the daily level. Now, granted, my data is demo oriented, doesn't, it's not perfectly, a view of reality, but it does, if you look at the concept of what I'm doing here, this could really benefit the user here. So as I close out that view and I pick a different one for 55, first choice coming in at 55.8, now I can see how that 55.8 trends out and compare that to last year. And this data looks a little more realistic. And then I can drill in back in on the time elements. So the drill to view, in this case is invaluable. I can then give these very easy techniques and features to the user and allow them to navigate freely without having to think too much about what they're doing. And if you hover over that, as you can see, it'll tell you what it's going to do and where it's going to take you. Switching gears a little bit here, looking at inventory. So now I'm running an inventory availability view. So in this case, if you're not using inventory in your Stratum database, this should show you some of the value with that. So this particular view is showing me by warehouse, product line, and product. We can see the on-hand quantities for current month. And then we can see what's been allocated to certain customers. And then we can see what's available. And as you can see, we're in negative territory already for certain items, which is never good for inventory. And on top of that, we've got a rolling 52-week average of sales. So our weeks of supply actually is very low for these items across the board. Well, again, here's my open orders. So if I can, get these shipped out, it certainly would. Um, but and with the limited availability I have, it's probably part of the problem. So we have a shortfall here, and as you can see, we've got non-hold orders or total, and then non-hold orders are available here as well for visibility, which is a subset of the total open order number. So given that, what we can see then, and also over here, then we can see on-hand value, the allocated value, and the available inventory amount based on inventory value. And you might have, a certain view here that I could filter to just show the negative amounts. If I were to come in here and filter the view here and just say, well, just show me anything negative here. And then I can just have this set up as an alert. And this is really, my problematic area. So I can add an alert to this and be alerted to this automatically if I wanted to schedule this as an alert. So again, bringing in data from these different areas on hand, you can even pull in production if you wanted to work in process, so you can see what's coming in into inventory in terms of disbursements from production. Might be a good idea to do as well. With production, we can see that we've got a production quality alert already set up. So the production data, as you can see, so now we're actually dipping into the production side of Stratum for manufacturing. And we can see our total produced numbers for a weekly comparison. Here we can see week 38 compared to week for the amount in units compared to the same week here. And we can see total production units, total good. So we can see that it's basically looking at current week, production amount, produced total, units that were produced total, and then what was good. So now we have a measure within the application that allows you to parse out total production into what was produced as good versus not good. So in this case, we can do the math on that. We can see that we've got a quality rate now. So if we were to take a look at the calculation on that, it's actually being stored, but you can certainly calculate that as well. So in this case, we've got an alert here, and then we've got anything that's less than 0.95. So anything less than 95% quality, I'd like to see it here. Furthermore, we got the lower numbers highlighted in red, so we can really see areas of concern. And then to the right, we've got other measures that help you understand what's going on. We've got on time good, on time. So, what was on time versus late. And we can see that, then we can get a better idea of scheduling issues. Are we meeting the master schedule? And I can set this up as alert, and have that emailed to me on a regular basis. So here I've got the alert email sent to me that I actually sent to myself this morning. And this is one way to show it, where you can have the view show up in the email content area, and then you can be alerted to it as opposed to looking for problems. You can then just have it emailed to you and manage it that way. And so that dips into our access hub, right? The ability to set up these alerts and use the broadcast capabilities of Stratum to send out and alert the users for negative situations. And then there's purchasing. So now we've got a view dealing with going to the purchasing side of things, supply chain. On the supply side, we can see how purchasing is going on. We've got units on PO, actual costs, our standard cost. So a little bit of a difference there in terms of actual versus standard. And we can see there's quite a bit of discrepancies here for the PPV for certain vendors, farm fresh, specialty fruits, where, as you can see, our expected costs coming in, where the standard cost is well below that. So we can see a problem here that we could potentially drill into to find out what products that we're purchasing from these vendors that are causing these dips in purchase price variance. Farm fresh, for instance, if we drill on that, we can then see that there's a whole slew of items here that we need to take a look at in terms of the PPV and what we're expected versus what we're actually getting. We've got standard costs out here, but our actual costs are coming in well above that. So now I can manage this perhaps by looking at other vendors and other than fresh farms where you can potentially source these items from and take action on that. So on the production side of things or purchasing side of things here, we can see a whole list of our primary vendors. And I could roll that up to our primary and secondary vendors and see what's going on. And as we can see, our secondary vendors are doing fine in terms of expected versus standard. It's the problem lies in the primary vendor, and then we can see that it's only a select few that we want to deal with here for on the purchasing side of things. So as you can see, Stratum not only deals with sales, but open orders, of course, which is part of the sales process. And then we dipped into inventory so that we can see what's going on the inventory side, which then kind of pretty much directly relates to production. And of course, purchasing, so that we can't really produce anything if we're not getting, materials on time. Where we can certainly go into that, and we have views dealing with, are we getting materials sent to us on time? Or are we getting, is it affecting our bottom line? Are we purchasing materials that are coming in at a higher cost than what we have set up for standard cost and expected cost? So having these data points available is, paramount to, understanding what's going on in the company. And then, of course, with forecasting, you've got the ability to bring in forecasts. One way to do that is to come in and do a data import. Data import allows users to import data from Excel spreadsheets or from text files or from a SQL database table or from cloud content for that matter. Our latest release allows users to import data from all these different areas. Instead of just Excel, they can tap into a database table. Wherever that data exists, they can certainly go in and import that data and select what source of data they want to import from. Now, granted, not every user is going to be able to do this. So only certain users are going to be set up as these what we call data stewards that are allowed to actually do these more advanced types of imports. Because you don't want everyone just importing data everywhere, right? And on top of that, certain measures are set up for importing data into, so that you're not really, importing data into a sales category, which would not be good. This would be just strictly reserved for like forecasting, budgeting, or whatever any else that type of data that you can think of that you might want to import. Point of sale data might be a good candidate as well. So how do we do this? Well, if we click on add or new, we can then go in and select the view that we want to, or the Excel file in this case, that we want to import. So I'm going to select my Excel file and import that in. And it's going to ask me the question about where to put it. Do I put it, what measure do I want to store this data in? What does the file look like? Is it a time series file or a transactional based file? And that gets into formatting of the actual Excel file. If we were to take a look at the Excel file and what that looks like, we can see that the sales plan example file, which is the one I just imported, looks like this. And it's already refreshing and it's asking me to sign in. I'm not going to refresh that. So as you can see, it's already tapped into Stratum so that I can bring in data from Stratum and refresh it automatically. I'm going to go ahead and close our Excel connector, which does that for you, because I just want you to see what the file looks like here. As you can see, I've got my data going across the rows, and I've got my dimensions here. It's a flat file, essentially, right? And all my data, January through December, are going across horizontally. That's what we call a time series file. So that's what we're using to import the data into Stratum. And then we need to tell it, what it looks like and what the data is formatted like, et cetera, so they can go ahead and import the data in. And then I can do the mapping to tell it what are these levels that I want to map it to. So that I map my levels accordingly. So region, obviously, would go to region. We can ignore some of the descriptive data and then map in the rest of our data. See, and map that in accordingly. Once you do the mapping once, it'll remember the mapping and you won't have to do that again. And in terms of the data, I need to tell what measure to put that into as well. So I want my projected gross sales, and I would tell it this is my projected gross sales for all of these columns, and then go ahead and import that data. Once the data is imported, then you can go in and take a look at it. By running a view. And here's my data with those same levels, right? And if I blow all that out, it's all those levels that I had within my view. Customer, product, region, and then I've got my budget data over there. And as I gain transactions against my budget throughout the year, I can then go ahead and turn on my sales measure so that I could do some comparative analysis. By the end of the year, I now have my budget and my sales amount where I can then see the variances accordingly between these two. If I add in a calculated column here, I can do some math on that, like a percent of change. If I use the Stratum viewer function percent of change, then I can select the measures that I want to see that percent of change on. And I only have two measures, so it makes it pretty simple. Then go ahead and format that as a percent, call it percent of change. And here we can then put in, do the properties on that particular measure, and I can throw in a conditional format so that maybe I want to see my negatives in red so that they're highlighted a little bit more boldly. And voila, I now have a sales versus budget or a forecast view where I can see where I'm meeting or exceeding my forecasts and take action on that. Now, granted, you'd probably want to do this several times throughout the year. This is more of an example in a vacuum, if you will. But as you can see, I'm dipping into areas where, in this case, the Access Hub allows me to import this data so that I can actually add or augment data into Stratum and compare that with some of the stored values that I have within Stratum as well. So as you can see, all these different areas, all these applications, they come together, and you can see the data across your enterprise without too much effort. And by using some of the underlying features and capabilities, such as broadcast alerts, you can then, really kind of be managed by exception. Without having to look at these things or be surprised by anything, you can then be more proactive about it.